Actually, I had quite an illustrious career, 27 and a half years in the FBI. And in those 27 and a half years, I had 13 assignments, so I moved around the country. The only part of the country I never did live in was really the extreme northeast U.S. So also during my career, I handled just about everything. I was counter-espionage, counter-terrorism in New York and Connecticut, and I negotiated with some skyjackers at Philadelphia International Airport for 2.5 hours, July the 12th, 1972. And I ended up being in charge of most of Southern California. Had over 700 personnel under my command. I personally investigated the Oklahoma City bombing case, huge cover-up. Jack Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. Bobby Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. World Trade Center, huge cover-up. Okay, terrorism. They're using it as an excuse to take away our constitutional rights and our civil liberties. The Bilderbergs. I'm Ted L. Gunderson, a 27-year veteran of the FBI who retired in March of 1979. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division with more than 700 personnel under my command and a budget of $22.5 million. I was an agent on the street for 9.5 years, and then I advanced administratively. I was a supervisor, and then I was number 2-man in Connecticut and Philadelphia, and assistant special agent in charge was the title. And then I became a chief inspector, and then I was agent in charge in Memphis, Dallas, and the senior special agent in charge in Los Angeles, because I had 3 other special agents in charge under me and 24 supervisors under them. I have information chiseled in stone, documented, that the FBI had advanced knowledge about 911 and did nothing to prevent this from occurring. And this is atrocious, it's unbelievable, having been a former FBI agent myself, and it's very obvious that this whole thing is being orchestrated by the powers that be at the highest level of our government, and I want the world to know about it. The minute I saw the planes fly in to the tower on television, live as a matter of fact, the question I had in my mind was, there is no way, absolutely no way, that somebody could skyjack 4 planes, 20 people, skyjack 4 planes, in this case 19 individuals, and our government would not know about it in advance. We have, the U.S. government, the most advanced intelligence techniques of anybody in the world, and you'll never convince me we didn't have advanced knowledge about what was going on. We saw the airplanes go in, and it's also a question about whether they're remotely controlled. I don't know about that. I hate to comment on something where I have no documentation, but there's much more to this story than has come out so far. You will never in a million years convince me that those buildings, those towers, collapsed because those planes hit them. I'm confident that they were imploded. As a matter of fact, there were seismograph readings they think from the basement, 2 of them, about the time that the buildings collapsed. There were also molten steel that was in the basement, which is a very high temperature for melting steel, and those planes hit above the 80th floor, so there's no way that airplane fuel could have dropped down that low. Also, there were fires that burned in the basement for some 100 days afterwards. So there's some implication, and there's some finagling, there's some maneuvering, as far as I'm concerned, and there are many, many more people involved in this than these so-called skyjackers and terrorists. The anti-terrorism legislation was written back in the middle 1980s under the George Bush Sr. administration. A female Department of Justice attorney, who was one of the authors, made the statement publicly, before this passes Congress, people have to be killed. Now, if we fast forward to a World Trade Center car bombing in February 1993. At that time, the FBI had a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer as an informant who was in with the terrorists. He was commissioned by the terrorists to put the bomb together. He went to his FBI superiors, we're going to use a dummy bomb, right? And they said, no, we're going to use a real bomb. So the FBI not only knew in advance that they were going to bomb the World Trade Center, they furnished the ingredients for the bomb, which is absolutely unbelievable. that they get away with this. What's unbelievable about it is this was actually printed in the New York Times on October 28, 1993. But they got away with it. And if I was a congressman or senator, I would demand an investigation. Why would the FBI furnish the ingredients for the bomb that brought down or that had damaged the World Trade Center in February 1993? We had 6 people killed there. We had 1,000 people injured. We had a total of 6 citizens who died in the February 1993 World Trade Center car bombing. We had $1,000 worth of 1,000 individuals were injured. We had $500,000 in damage. But there weren't enough people who died to pass the anti-terrorism legislation. So now we fast forward to May the 19th, April the 19th, 1995, Oklahoma City bombing. We had 169 people who died, probably 169 because there was one leg they never did identify. And a year later, the anti-terrorism legislation passed. Now, it wasn't tough enough. I can't prove that there were explosives that were placed in the World Trade Center in the 9/11 situation. However, from what I've seen, an expert on implosions from Albuquerque, New Mexico, that worked for the government under government contract, stated immediately afterwards that the buildings were imploded. And then he retracted his statement and said, well, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Basically, now he's saying that they weren't imploded. But other experts who have looked at the pictures say that the buildings were imploded. I think that in order to implode those buildings, there had to be implications, government implications or involvement in placing these charges. I mean, that was a tremendous project. I mean, I don't know how many people would be involved in it. Going back to Oklahoma City, an inside investigator told me there were at least 11 other people involved in the Oklahoma City bombing. Now, if you have 11 other people involved in Oklahoma City, you're going to have 3 or 4 times that involved in the World Trade Center situation. Going back to Oklahoma City, the government claimed that there was a fertilizer, ammonium nitrate fertilizer bomb in the truck. Initially, it came out, I think, with 1,500 pounds, and then it's 2,500 pounds. And in the end, they said 4,800 pounds. A fertilizer bomb explodes in 360-degree, but there's no question about it. The bomb that was in that truck was a directional bomb. Now, there was a bomb called electrohydrodynamic gaseous fuel device that was developed in the early 1980s, highly classified. It was developed by Hercules Manufacturing in Silicon Valley, California. At the time of the first explosion in the experiment in Area 51, 2 technicians died because they underestimated its the power and the strength of this bomb. My informant, my main informant, Michael Reconasuto, whose firm, Hercules Manufacturing, actually developed this bomb. Michael was with the agency for years. It was his father, Marshall, told me that the bomb, the truck bomb in Oklahoma City was this electrohydrodynamic gaseous fuel device. We call it a pineapple bomb because it's the size of a pineapple, but very, very powerful. And then what I think happened in Oklahoma City is that we had the pineapple bomb go off, and then 9 seconds later we had a conventional bomb go off on the inside.
With regard to this proceeding, basically there are 4 elements that I have to receive information regarding them. Everybody, let's get out of here. Now! What's the electricity line? What's the light? What's the light? Yeah. On the main door. All the way to the right.
I have a newspaper article, actually a publication from the Fireman's Magazine, where the author, who is the editor of the magazine and obtained the information from the Oklahoma City Fire Department, states that 4 unexploded devices were brought out of Oklahoma City, the Murrah building, that 4 unexploded devices were brought out of the Murrah building. This is in this article, Fireman's Publication. I think it was September of 1995 when it was published. Now, if that's the case, then you had 5 conventional bombs planted on the inside, and you had the barometric bomb, or the pineapple bomb, in the truck. And now we have the news media. I have copies of the news media that were recorded that afternoon, the afternoon of Oklahoma City, and reporter after reporter after reporter has made the statement, oh, they recovered a bomb that was unexploded. One of them is specifically said, they recovered a bomb, and now we're going to know where the bombs came from because it has U.S. Army written on the side, stenciled on the side. So we have, and McVeigh, as far as McVeigh was concerned, I think McVeigh was a mind control victim. The government said he's flunked out of Special Forces. I doubt that. I think he was in Special Forces. He wrote a letter to his sister saying he'd been recruited by the CIA to be trained as a professional assassin and also to work on the CIA drug operation. And he was visited in Oklahoma City and in Colorado when he was in custody by Dr. Jolly West, DLA. Dr. West is the foremost expert on MK-Ultra. MK-Ultra is a government CIA mind control program. I was not, had absolutely no knowledge of the project, MK-Ultra, the Monarch project, during the period I was in the FBI. It was only after I got out of the FBI and I started doing my own research. And that came about because I was the investigator of the Jeffrey R. McDonald case. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife and 2 children in Fort Bragg, February 17, 1970. And he was tried and convicted, sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. I was called into the case after he'd been tried and convicted. His friends said he's innocent, and I began my investigation. Within 10 months, October 25, 1980, I obtained a signed confession from a girl, Helena Stokely, who said Dr. McDonald did not commit those crimes. They were committed by her satanic cult group. The satanic cult group was distributing drugs up and down the East Coast. They were being flown in plastic bags of the body cavities of the dead GIs coming out of Southeast Asia. And this is the late 60s, early 70s. This is all documented. Time magazine, January 1, 1973. Dr. McDonald is absolutely innocent, and he's in jail today, 20-some years in prison. Now, the reason I tell you about that case is because after I developed this information and went public with my confession from Helena, I was on national TV, I was on radio talk shows, and people came from all parts of the United States and said, hey, I know all about that, satanic cults, it's for real, I'm a victim, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how I became involved and embroiled in these very controversial issues. And then I started doing my own research, and one thing led to another. And then I investigated international child kidnapping ring out of the Midwest, out of Nebraska. They were flying children out of Sioux City, Iowa to Washington, D.C. for sex orgies with congressmen and senators. And just went on and on. And I had the McMartin case out of Southern California. The children were dropped off in the school in the morning by their parents. They picked them up late in the afternoon. In the interim, they put the kids through tunnels and up into the trapdoor, the triplex next door, put them in automobiles and prostituted them. 2, 3, 4-year-old children. Unbelievable. And this is how I became involved in all these issues. And I just kept going, as any good investigator would do. I just keep going. The international child kidnapping ring is not being exposed. I have personally given my documentation to the FBI on at least 6 or 8 occasions, and I have been ignored because it's a covert CIA child kidnapping operation that's been active since the early 1960s. What's happening here is these children are being flown, or were in the past in the 1980s, out of Sioux City, Iowa, to Washington, D.C. for these sex orgies for the purpose of blackmailing the congressman, of compromising them. And of course, hey, there's a bill that's going to be passed on Monday, and then I can come around to you and say, Congressman, you remember when you were with that little boy, that little girl last Friday? Okay, you better vote this way. That's exactly what's happening. It's called blackmail. This is a CIA covert operation. It's called the Finders out of Washington, D.C. And they're involved in kidnapping and international trafficking of children around the world. And I had, in my day, in the 80s, I had one of the kids who was actually part of the kidnapping team. When he was 10, 11, 12 years old, they would put him out as a decoy in the parks or shopping malls and so forth, and to attract the kids his age over near the car, and then the adults would grab the children and be off with them. One little kid was a 12-year-old newspaper boy named Johnny Gosh out of West Des Moines, Iowa. Johnny Gosh was kidnapped, and back in 1982, he was taken in, used as a sex slave. Later, he and another kid escaped. They stole a car and escaped, and Johnny Gosh is in hiding right today, by the way. The children are used for body parts. They're used for satanic ceremonies, human sacrifices. They're used as sex slaves. In 1997, I think it was, I was in Denver giving a lecture. I had a tip from an airline employee that 210 children flew out of Denver to New York and then on to Paris, France. The airline employee who saw this was refueling the plane, asked a female adult and two male adults who were with the children, asked a female adult and two male adults who were with the children, who are these kids? And the woman says, Child Protective Services, mind your own business. And that man, by the way, has disappeared. I also had a tip from an airline employee, a flight attendant out of Los Angeles, that a plane load of kids, children, was flown to Paris, France. Paul Benassi, my informant inside the Nebraska case, who was part of the Child Network, told me that some of these kids are auctioned off. He's attended 6 such auctions. As few as 6 and as many as 36 children were auctioned off at these various auctions. The children sell for up to $50,000 each, sometimes more. The ages are 2 to 21. The kids stand on a stage in their underwear with a number across their, with the string around their neck and a number on a cord, on a piece of cardboard, and the people in the audience bid on them, just like bidding on an automobile. This is going on right under our nose. I've given this to the FBI and demanded investigation. I gave the latest complaint I filed is in writing as of November of this last year. I just keep pumping it over to them.